And welcome to the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council meeting for November 28th, 2022. I am Mayor Kurt Wilson. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Mortland, Councilmember Michael Palermo, and Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. I'd now like to turn it over to our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, to explain how the meeting is run. Mr. Knighton.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson, and good evening. In accordance with Section Chapter 3.70 of the City Code, the City Council shall hold regular public meetings. Excuse me. The purpose of these City Council meetings are for the public to participate and speak on agenda items which constitute formal decisions by the elected body. These items are listed on the published agenda, which can be accessed via the city website prior to the meeting. This is a public meeting, and some items do require a formal public hearing. A significant and important component of the City Council meetings are to hear directly from citizens on the items listed on the published agenda. Public comments or questions are essential for the mayor and council to incorporate as they contemplate each decision. Citizens are at the top of the organizational chart for the City of Roswell, and therefore it is imperative for mayor and council to hear from citizens in these meetings. If you would like to speak on an item, we ask that you fill out a comment card in order to ensure an accurate record of the meeting. And we ask, of course, that everyone observe the principles of mutual respect and display the appropriate demeanor during the course of the meeting this evening, which should be reflective of this great community. The mayor is the presiding officer of this meeting and will ensure the orderly exchange of comments, questions, and discussion leading to decision-making by the elected body. We'd also encourage everyone in attendance and the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. We also encourage you to review and participate in the various activities and offerings in the city. There are many events scheduled coming up in the City of Roswell that the mayor will speak about in just a few minutes, which promote community, physical activity, and leisure as we make Roswell the #1 family community in America. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. At this time, I'd like to call Rabbi Chaim Schwartz, Director of Shabbat of downtown Roswell, to the front for our invocation and moment of silence. And Rabbi Schwartz will also tell us about the lighting of the menorah on December 20th.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. As a Roswell native who recently moved back to the city, I'm honored this evening to offer the invocation for the council meeting. Almighty God, bless this council as they perform their sacred duty to fulfill one of the 7 commandments given to Noah and his family after the great flood for all humanity. Namely, the command to create moral societies governed by just laws based upon the recognition of an all-powerful creator. Grant them the strength, clarity, and fortitude to enact laws and make decisions with an awareness of this commandment as their guide. Master of the universe, please bless the mayor, the council, and all the citizens of Roswell with health, prosperity, and peace of mind. And may they utilize these blessings to fulfill their unique purpose, which is to imbue themselves and those around them with light, justice, and kindness. And through each of our individual efforts, may we merit the culmination of creation in an era of peace and harmony for all of humanity, when, as is stated in Yeshayahu, Isaiah, nation will not live sword against nation, and neither will they learn war anymore. Rather, all of creation will be united in the recognition of the one Creator, as is further stated by Isaiah, the world will be filled with knowledge of God like water covers the seabed. Amen.
Amen.
I would also like to take this opportunity to invite Mayor Wilson and the council to our public Hanukkah celebration and menorah lighting on the evening of December 20th in the heart of Roswell Park downtown. Should Mayor Wilson be able to attend, we would like to invite him to share greetings and to honor him with lighting the shamash candle, the central torch of the menorah, which will then be used to kindle the remaining lights. This holiday acknowledges and commemorates the miracle which happened some 2,200 years ago in Jerusalem, when a single vessel of oil was discovered amidst the debris of the Holy Temple. Containing enough oil to light the menorah in the temple for just one day, this small jug of oil miraculously burned for 8 days, providing enough time to obtain more. In appreciation to God Almighty, we light a menorah annually for 8 days to share and celebrate this great miracle. In doing so, we celebrate the victory of light over darkness, truth over illusion, and goodness over complacency. May the lights of the menorah inspire us all to be beacons of light to the world around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Schwartz, and what a great honor to have the opportunity to light the Shemos. Thank you. That's an incredible honor, and yes, we will be more than happy to join you. Thank you. At this time, I would like to call our friend Keith Bogle, who is director of the Johns Creek Veteran Association Color Guards, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate the beginning of this year. Our friend Roger Wise, one of the Georgia great veterans, was kind enough to put a list together of fantastic people to help lead us in the pledge this year, and include not just some Roswell folks, but some Johns Creek folks. We have a great relationship with the city of Johns Creek, and the mayor over there being a copycat. I understand. I'm very pleased. Is about to start beginning the same esteemed veterans of Johns Creek. So I'm excited about that. Keith, thank you for being with us tonight very much. And also, next on the agenda is our mayor's report. And the first item is the reading of a proclamation for the esteemed veteran of Roswell. And that award tonight is for Frederick Miller Reese Jr. At this time, I'd like to call Sergeant Frederick Miller Reese Jr. forward for the proclamation. And I'd like to begin a new protocol, and I'd like to ask the council to join me down there at the front podium. Sergeant Reese, thank you, sir. So glad you're here. Proclamation. Office of the Mayor, Sergeant Frederick Miller Reese Jr., esteemed veteran of Roswell. Whereas in November 1970, as a married man of 25 with one son, Rick Reese, enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve. He went through basic training at the Marine Corps Recruit Base in Parris Island, South Carolina, and advanced infantry training at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. He received military occupational specialty training as an electrician at Camp Geiger at the Camp Lejeune complex and completed training with the rank of Private First Class. And whereas upon completion of training as Private First Class, Rick was assigned to the 4th Engineer Battalion, Engineer Support Company based in Baltimore, Maryland. The Engineer Support Company consisted of a mortar transport platoon and a utilities platoon. These platoons were to maintain a constant state of readiness to support active duty units by completing major projects in each specialty discipline. And whereas Rick's fondest memory was to actively participate in the annual Marine Corps Toys for Tots program in Baltimore, Maryland. The Toys for Tots holds a long, proud history of the Marine Corps Reserve since its inception in 1947. In 1996, the Secretary of Defense approved Toys for Tots as an official mission of the Marine Corps Reserve. It brought a great personal joy to Rick to be instrumental in the consolidation and transportation of toys to nonprofit locations for the families and children in need during the holiday season. And whereas the Engineer Support Company Utilities Platoon engaged in a number of major operations, in 1972, Baltimore, Maryland, the platoon assisted with hurricane relief from Hurricane Agnes. In 1973, Vaux, Puerto Rico, Naval Training Range performed plumbing and electrical repairs to the Marine Corps base facilities. In 1974, Quantico Marine Corps Base, electrical repairs to the Camp Upshur classroom training buildings. In 1975, Aberdeen, Maryland, Proving Ground Facilities assisted in the stress testing of military vehicles. And in 1976, the platoon was deployed to a rural Maryland location to construct a small water treatment facility. And whereas in November 1976, Sergeant Reese was honorably discharged by the United States Marine Corps after completing 6 years of reserve service and was bestowed the following medals: Military Service Medal and the Good Conduct Medal. And whereas we remember the strength of our community and nation is in our collective bond to a spirit of service, and that there is no higher calling than those who have served in the United States Armed Forces. Now, therefore, I, Kurt M. Wilson, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby name Sergeant Frederick Miller Reese, Jr., an esteemed veteran of Roswell, on November 28, 2022, and call upon all our citizens to recognize his outstanding service to his country and our community. Sergeant Reese, would you like to say a couple words?
I would. Let me take my glasses off because I read better without them. Well, first of all, the one thing that I have as a takeaway from my time in the Marines is the discipline and the comradeship that all bestowed on all of us. In addition to that, we were a team. We worked together to get whatever projects we were assigned successfully completed, and with the least amount of delay as we could make it happen. And one thing that came to mind for the cleanup operations after Hurricane Agnes, just to demonstrate the force of that kind of water coming into a community. While we were there, I saw the back of a house that had an in-ground swimming pool, and the water from a stream probably 30 yards lower down a hill slope had come up and actually moved that out of its hole and leaned it up against a tree. That is a sight I will never, never forget. But Toys for Tots were really something I just love being part of. We did it, as Mayor indicated, for a long, long time. I think about a total of 60 years or so. And although I don't recall how many toys we collected during the time I was there, but I did look up the current statistics. And over 100,000 toys were collected in 2021, and over 40,000 needy children got smiles on their faces as a result of that. So I'm happy to be part of that total operation. Now, I understand that the city of Roswell also engages in Toys for Tots. And there's a collection point at the Roswell 911 Center is hosting their annual Toys for Tots. I assume that's at the police station just down the street. Donations must be unwrapped and new, which is what we did then too. Donation boxes are located in the lobby of the Roswell Police Station at 39 Hill Street, and donations are due by December 8th. So I will support everything that they're doing here in Roswell to make that happen for a successful collection period, and the families and the children will be indebted to you for a long, long time as a result of that. And I appreciate the honor of being recognized at this time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Let's bring Linda and Rick Jr. up here as well. I know, and this is yours, by the way. Linda, come on up.
Yes.
And where's Rick? There he is. Come on in here. I know you guys want to get in here. Come on. Oh!
Your daughter Ashley
Daughter Ashley, wife Linda, and son Rick.
and son-in-law Mark.
Son-in-law Mark. Come on up, Mark. That's it.
I just seen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the mayor's report is the approval of a planning commission appointment, Eric Schumacher. And at this time, I'd like to ask if there are any comments on Mr. Schumacher's appointment from the council. Being that there are no comments from the council on Mr. Schumacher's appointment, Mr. Schumacher, would you like to say anything, sir? That's maybe the finest words I've ever heard in this chamber. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's a motion to approve Eric Schumacher to the Planning Commission.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Christine Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Lee Hills. All those in favor of approving Eric Schumacher to the Planning Commission, please raise your hands. And motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Schumacher. I have a letter for you. We'll come down there after our other two appointments and take pictures. Thank you, sir. Next on the mayor's report is the approval of a planning commission appointment, Pooja Gardner. Are there any appointments, any comments from our council? Will, Shirley, you've got this. You always want to say something, I know. I couldn't help it.
Excited to see, excited to have Pooja coming aboard and joining on. She'll do great work.
Thank you, Will. All right. Pooja, would you like to say anything? Outstanding. These comments tonight are amazing. I would like, is there a motion to approve Pooja Gardner to the Planning Commission?
Motion to approve Pooja Gardner.
Motion made by Councilmember Will Mortland. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Michael Palermo. All those in favor of appointing Pooja Gardner to the Planning Commission, please raise your hands. The appointment of Pooja Gardner to the Planning Commission is unanimous. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Pooja. We'll come down there with your letter and take pictures here in just a minute as well. The next item on the mayor's report is the approval of Roswell Recreation Commission appointment, William Stryka. Are there any comments from council on the potential commission appointment of William Stryka? He can't help himself. He's just, yes, sir. Councilmember Mortland.
We are excited to have William Stryka join board and grateful for his efforts.
Thank you, Will. Any other, yes, sir. Councilmember Mike Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I'd just like to mention, I appreciate You know, it's hard to get volunteers, and I definitely appreciate anyone willing to volunteer for the city, and that's a great thing. And I want to point out that Mr. Strike has been a very active volunteer when it comes to something that's certainly what I consider a recreation activity, which deals with makerspace. And in fact, earlier today, having some current Boy Scouts even looking and seeing some of the fine work that can go on in the makerspace. So there might be even some additional potential residents that want to actually see the great makerspace that Mr. Stryker and other residents have been great volunteers for.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Any other comments from council? Thank you. Mr. Stryker, do you have anything you'd like to say, sir? Outstanding. All right. Do I have a motion to approve William Stryker to the Recreation Commission?
Motion to approve William Stryker.
Motion made by Councilmember William Morthland. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom. Sorry, Christine, I do apologize. So all those in favor of the approval of the nomination appointment of to the Roswell Recreation Commission of William Stryker, please raise your hands. The appointment is unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Stryker. So at this time, I would like all the council to join me down at the bottom, and let's get pictures with all of our three new amazing appointees.
Palermo, can you take a step that way? There you go. Okay, thank you. Ready? There we go. Thank you.
In all seriousness, we know that William, Pooja, and Eric are going to do great work for our city. Thank you so much for stepping up and volunteering. It's a big deal. Thank you so much. Before I get to a piece of serious business, I want to bring up a couple of things. We always like to acknowledge and there's so many great acts that happen in this city, and you just can't recognize them enough, but just a point of personal privilege. So Saturday, just 2 days ago, I'm at my house watching the football game, and my 21-year-old daughter comes and gets me in my office, and she says, "Dad, the owner of the house has to come to the front door. There's 2 policemen there." So I go to the front door, and there's 2 policemen, Officer Heineman and Officer Casano. And they were there because they were responding to a call. Sharon, where's Sharon? They were responding to a call from Waste Management because the Waste Management truck, when they lifted its arm, had hit a little piece of my brick mailbox and knocked off a small chip of it. And the reason I share that with you was the engagement was, how about this? So in November of 2022, you know, people talk about the things where we lack character and all the bad stories. And this is a perfect example. This guy has no idea who I am, the waste management guy, the driver. He stops his vehicle when he makes a mistake. He calls his supervisor and calls the police at the same time to make sure that a Roswell resident, because of I put the darn recycling can on the wrong side. It wasn't even his fault, it was mine. And yet his arm lifts up, he takes responsibility for it, calls the police, calls his supervisor, and on a Saturday afternoon, I can't tell you the level of engagement. These 2 officers, Officer Heineman and Officer Casano, Kyle, unbelievable. And Billy, the supervisor for waste management, and Kip, the driver for waste management, the level of engagement, the level of service, and I'm telling you, they didn't know me from Adam's aunt, just another Roswell resident. And I just can't help but brag on these folks as my chair continues to sink down, so I apologize. But I wanted to share that with you, Sharon, Kyle, Jim, great stuff. Thank you. The last item for approval, oh, we're skipping one, sorry. Oh, boy. We have 3 big items here. So, Will, do you want to introduce 2 very special guests that came to visit you, and Christine and Lee and Michael, before the meeting real quick? Because this is the big business I was talking about.
We have 2 Boy Scouts in attendance, scouts now, and they are working on their Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge, which is a required Eagle track, and had a very nice conversation before the city council meeting. Got to meet several council members as well as the mayor, and they are here to observe a council meeting. And hopefully we can set a good tone and a good precedent for them to potentially take up government work after college, possibly. So,
Thanks,
very
Will.
good.
Welcome. We're glad you guys are here. Can't have enough Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts. We love having you at the meetings. Thank you for being with us. All right, the next 3 items under the mayor's report are in reference to the 3 bond referendum questions that were approved at the November 8th special election. They are the resolutions to formally validate the official election results from the bond questions. We will do each one separate, so we will have a separate vote for each. The first approval is approval of a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Roswell declaring the results from the special election held on November 8, 2022, on the bond referendum for the issuance of $107,600,000 in aggregate principal amount of City of Roswell general obligation bonds for parks and recreation projects, bicycle and pedestrian paths, and sidewalks. Do I have any comments from council? Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Councilmember Palermo, would you like to go down there and talk? Yes, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
I just wanted to bring up for the public, so certainly I will be voting in support of these, and that's purely to reflect, obviously, the vote of the residents. So ultimately, I think I'd ask this council, of course, irrelevant for any individual one on how this council feels. Ultimately, I feel this is ultimately to reflect the vote of the people.
Mike, just for curiosity's sake, would you like to just share with our audience the general percentages of the vote on the first issue of the $107.6 million general obligation bonds for Parks and Rec?
I'm going to guess it was around 75%, but I don't remember for sure.
74% of Roswell residents approved that bond. That is an amazing number in political terms. Great kudos to the work of the entire Parks and Rec department, the finance department, the entire staff on their hard work on this. And so I think I speak for all of us. We're grateful to have the opportunity to serve our residents in this manner. So, do I have a motion to approve this resolution declaring the results on the bond referendum for the issuance of $107,600,000 in aggregate principal amount of the City of Roswell general obligation bonds for parks and recreation projects, bicycle and pedestrian paths, and sidewalks?
motion to approve.
Motion is made by Councilmember William Mortland. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Christine Hall. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. The next approval is approval of a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Roswell declaring the results from the special election held on November 8, 2022 on the bond referendum for the issuance of $52 million in aggregate principal amount of City of Roswell general obligation bonds for public safety projects. Are there any comments from council? Councilmember Lee Hills.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. This mayor and council obviously were in favor of all of these, putting all of these questions on the ballot since they went there. But I just, as the liaison for public safety, this is the one that I was most excited about, and I'm thrilled with how much we're about to see improvement as far as our public safety needs being met for our residents and being provided, the level of service being upped as well, with the surroundings being upgraded and careful consideration. So I'm delighted.
Thank you, Councilmember Hills. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I certainly think the questions deserve to be asked. Ultimately, all that mattered to me was what the residents wanted, and it was up to them, and I liked that it was not up to us. With that, now that clearly the voters have decided these are things they want to invest in, and staff certainly worked very hard to really educate and show what those investments would go towards. I think even though staff worked really hard the last few months, as this mayor and council did, just to get out there in public, lots of different locations to really answer any and all possible questions. I think if anything now, the even harder work starts, which is I definitely believe that voters expect progress and faster progress than historically Roswell has seen. So I think it is very important that staff is moving fast and able to show some real progress on these.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Michael. Council, any other thoughts or comments? Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on the $52 million? Yes, sir. If you'll do us the kind service of sharing us your name when you get up here and where you live in Roswell. And thanks for being with us. Welcome.
My name is Patrick Cahill, and I live in the Litchfield 100 subdivision
Welcome,
of
Patrick.
Roswell. Luke 12, verse 48 reads, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Emanating from this teaching of Jesus is the French moral and political expression of noblige oblige, that is the inferred responsibility of privileged people to act with generosity and nobility towards those less privileged, especially the weakest and most vulnerable members of our society. Given that you have essentially confiscated 52 million taxpayer dollars for purposes of public safety, much has been given to you. I want to remind you, therefore, that much is required and expected of you in the disbursement and oversight of these monies in the agencies to which they are going to be given. To do this, I want to highlight a recent failure of those entrusted with the public safety of our community to serve as a counter exemplar. I'm going to be critical, and for the record, for some period in my life, I was a state trooper. So while I'm going to be critical, I am not unfamiliar with how hard the job of law enforcement is, and my criticism is offered in love in order that we might right the wrongs and move forward in building a better and safer community. For the past 2 weeks, the citizenry of Roswell and surrounding communities watched as a Shakespearean
So,
level
sir, are your comments about the $52 million bond, if this is specific to the $52 million bond?
Yes.
They don't sound like they are.
It's I'm using an exemplar. to show you-
I will not allow the example to be relevant to the $52 million bond question. If you want to speak to the $52 million bond question, that is relevant. If you want to cite a specific example where you think the city of Roswell police have failed, I don't see that as a relevant example, and I will not allow it. Councilmember Palermo.
I guess perhaps I wasn't listening as closely, but from my understanding, it talks about where we're having $52 million towards public safety, and I guess that's where I thought it was just to make sure that we are going to focus on how those dollars are spent. Is that not what the question or comment was about?
That's correct, and that's.
But
so
I thought that's what I was
I don't
hearing.
follow his line of comments. If your comments are specific to the $52 million.
My comments are specific to the use of the $52 million to remind you of the obligation entrusted to you to make sure those monies are used appropriately and with due oversight and respect.
Yes, sir, you may continue.
As I said, I'm going to be critical. Let me find my place. And so I know how they're blah, blah, blah. For the past 2 weeks, the citizenry of Roswell and surrounding communities watched as a Shakespearean-level tragedy played out in our community. At multiple points during the afternoon and evening of November 11th, Roswell police made contact with 64-year-old Hussein Esmail.
Sir, that is not appropriate. You're going into a specific issue of law enforcement. That has nothing to do with the $52 million general obligation bond.
Everything to do with how it is, and I think you're just
I'm sorry, sir.
afraid
I will not allow, no.
criticism.
Actually, happy to talk about it, but just not on, we will allow conversation, but not in reference to the $52 million bond. And so, and happy to bring you back up if you want to discuss it separately.
I
Yes,
do.
sir.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. So, are there any comments in reference to the $52 million public safety bond? If not, I bring it back to council. With no additional comments from council, I ask, do I have a motion to approve this resolution declaring the results in the bond referendum for the issue of $52 million in aggregate principal amount of the City of Roswell general obligation bonds for public safety projects?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Hill. Motion is made by Councilmember Lee Hills. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Will Mortland. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. The last item for approval is approval of a resolution of the mayor and council of the City of Roswell declaring the results from the special election held on November 8, 2022, on the bond referendum for the issuance of $20 million in aggregate principal amount of the City of Roswell general obligation bonds for the parking deck project. Are there any comments from council? Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom.
Yeah, as Economic Development Liaison, I'm pleased that we'll be bringing this project forward to Roswell based on the results of the vote. 57% were in favor. That means 43% are a little shaky on whether or not this is something they want in our city. And I want to remind them that along the journey of all of our public comment and public meetings, we did remind everyone, and I will make sure that the council and the mayor stick to this. We have a lot of public input ahead of us as to design, as to structure, and as to size and capacity. And so we'll be welcoming all of the public's input as we go through the process.
Thank you, Peter. Councilmember Mike Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. I think it's real important for the public to know that for all three bonds, there'll certainly be a lot of accountability of staff and a lot of public oversight and focus on how the money's spent. And as discussed at all the different public meetings, that these numbers are maximum dollar amounts. And so I think this is a really good example where right here we're approving the resolution for the issuance of $20 million. But Mr. Davidson, it's my understanding that as we move forward, and I don't know if this question's for Mr. Davidson or Mr. Luckett, as we move forward, there's the opportunity for that number to decrease if we find cost-saving opportunity. Is that correct, Mr. Davidson?
That's correct.
Excellent. And so this is actually a great example where this resolution will be for $20 million. That is what is approved. That is a maximum not to exceed. Again, this was discussed for anyone that attended one of those many public sessions. But again, I just want to stress as well, I'm certainly hoping we find opportunities to decrease that cost. One of the ways that was discussed in those public meetings is potential public-private partnerships as an opportunity to decrease it. Another one is frankly using already city-owned property, of course create some cost savings, but across all bonds, of course, we're going to make sure there's a lot of oversight and opportunities for cost savings.
Thank you, Michael. Council, any other thoughts, comments, or questions? With none being, I take it to the Roswell residents. Any comments from the public? With no comments from the public, I ask if there is a motion to approve this resolution. Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom? Oh. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution declaring the results on the bond referendum for the issuance of $20 million in aggregate principal amount on the City of Roswell general obligation bonds for the parking deck project?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilmember Peter Vanstrom. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Michael Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to break protocol a little bit since the gentleman came up here and wanted to speak. We usually save these for public comment on the third Mondays. But, sir, since you're here and you wanted to speak, I will certainly allow it. I will say that there may be some pushback. Some folks may disagree with you, and they may come from council or from the police. So just to let you know that there may be some challenging to some of your comments.
Not a novice. The last time I was here, I used the word Operation Yellow Ball, and it didn't go over very well with Mayor Henry.
How long ago was that?
How long ago was that, Mike?
2018. Well, welcome.
Again, I think,
Share,
I think my comments are
Will you
pertinent to the.
tell me your name again? I'm so
It's
sorry.
Patrick Cahill.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'll just start from the top if that's okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Luke 12:48 reads, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Emanating from this teaching of Jesus is the French moral and political expression of noblesse oblige, the inferred responsibility of privileged people to act with generosity and nobility towards those less privileged, especially the weakest and most vulnerable members of our society. Given that you have essentially confiscated 52 million taxpayer dollars for purposes of public safety, much has been given to you. And I want to remind you, therefore, that much is required and expected of you in the disbursement and oversight of these monies and the agencies to which they are being given. To do this, I want to highlight a recent failure of those entrusted with the public safety of our community and to serve as a counter-exemplar. I am, as I said, going to be critical, and for the record, for some period, I was a state trooper. So while I am going to be critical, I am not unfamiliar with how hard the job of law enforcement is, and my criticism is offered in a spirit of love in order that we might right the wrongs and move forward in building a better and safer community. For the past 2 weeks, the citizens of Roswell and surrounding communities watched as a Shakespearean-level tragedy played out in our community. At multiple points, clue one, during the afternoon and evening of November 11th, Roswell Police, RPD, made contact with 64-year-old Hussein Esmail. Unknown to anyone at the time, Mr. Esmail had a pre-existing diagnosis of bipolar disorder and was in cognitive decline. In fact, the very reason for the multiple contacts of November 11th was because to the civilian citizenry, Mr. Esmail appeared unwell, confused, and in not complete command of his faculties. In at least one instance, a Good Samaritan put Mr. Esmail in her car and physically delivered him to RPD because he clearly didn't know where he was. Clue number two, because it's not very often that ordinary citizens drop off healthy strangers to the police. Something was clearly wrong. One need only look at photos, clue number 3, of Mr. Esmail taken that day to see the subtle physical clues of someone in distress. All of these clues, however, which were obvious to civilians and precipitated the multiple contacts that day, apparently went unnoticed by theoretically trained and observant officers. As you well know, RPD let Mr. Esmail go on each of these occasions, the last one being at 9 p.m. on a night with freezing temperatures. RPD would have no further contact with Mr. Esmail until they were dispatched to investigate his deceased body, which was found in a small pond on the east side of Roswell. By the time RPD could loosely be said to have gotten its act together, Mr. Esmail's fate was likely already determined. The first public update was issued 11/16, 5 days later than the initial contact. Yet it's not so much an update as it is a quasi-update with a whole bunch of cover-your-ass verbiage. The updates read as the modern equivalent of Pontius Pilate's attempt to wash his hands of Christ's blood, right? We called all the telephone numbers that he gave to us, and we couldn't get a hold of anybody. We had him evaluated by EMT. They said he was okay. We just let him go into the dark, into the freezing temperatures, to a location we didn't verify. Our hands are clean of his blood. Those, however, are false statements because we all know, at least those of us in law enforcement, that there are a host of social service agencies available to help in situations like this, and pathways by which Mr. Esmail could have been legally detained if the competency and desire to help and protect him were truly there. And I want to suggest to you that if you persist in this Orwellian duplicity, that all was legally and morally done that could have been done, one begins to wonder if you have truly understood or absorbed the sheer magnitude of this failure and the betrayal of the public trust. We required more. We require more. We would, at a minimum, have expected RPD to have conducted these contacts with Mr. Esmail as if he was their own father. Had they done so, Mr. Esmail would likely be alive today. Finally, I want to suggest, especially as it relates to your personal oblige, that you continue to have an upper and mid-level management problem in the House of RPD. Had this been a single encounter event, one might be able to say that it was a one-off, an unskilled enforcement
Thank you,
officer
Mr.
had
Cahill.
failed.
Thank you, sir.
I have
Thank-
about
thank-
6 sentences left. Out
thank
of
you,
respect
sir.
for Mr. Hussein, can I finish
Thank you,
my
sir.
6 sentences?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I hope that's not your Laurie Henry moment.
Thank you, sir. Well, you just got 5 minutes, which is what every speaker gets. So you seem to make a lot of insinuations that are very charged, very emotionally charged. And I'm surprised, as a former law enforcement officer. I'm sorry, sir. You've had your time. I get mine.
Don't claim insinuations on me.
You're making insinuations without checking all the facts. One of the things that I find unfortunate is people can come up with a 5-minute prepared sentence and have 25% of the information and purport that out to the rest of the public and make very serious charges against the Roswell Police Department. And I personally find that regrettable, particularly when the facts of this case are clearly known, that the Roswell Police Department is not looking to be exonerated, because the Roswell Police Department mourned as much as anybody the loss of this man's life. And the Roswell Police Department did everything it could under the law to try to take care of this man. So the insinuations that this man was simply left to his own devices and he was a free man, number one. The police are limited. When you're a free person and you do not have dementia or Alzheimer's, the police have very, very, very strict regulations on what they can and cannot do. And the police did try to monitor this gentleman because they were concerned about his welfare. And I don't appreciate the narrative that the police did not care about this man's welfare. The police very much did. He was a free man. The police, like the rest of us, mourned the loss of this man. You know, there's another story from somebody from law enforcement, I know this. You know, we have a significant problem in the country and in our community with missing people who have dementia and Alzheimer's. This gentleman did not have dementia or Alzheimer's. He had high blood pressure and diabetes. And we are very sad that he is not with us today. But there's two sides to a story, and the Roswell police literally have to keep their hands handcuffed, no pun intended, in terms of purporting information because they're a legal entity. So I do take umbrage when someone can come up here and say 25% of the facts as purported, and it's a complete attack on the Roswell police. And I don't appreciate it personally as a resident or as mayor. So thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate your courage for coming up here and talking with us. Thank you, Mr. Cahill. All right. So last on the mayor's report is there is a bunch of upcoming events. And I guess the first event that I want to share with everybody is this Friday, December the 2nd, is the lighting of the Christmas tree here in the heart of Roswell Park. The city will be holding the Christmas tree lighting this year at the heart of Roswell Park on Canton Street to kick off our holiday season from 6 to 9 p.m. By the way, if you don't know this, Roswell High School and Fellowship High School are in the state semifinals football playoffs, and they're playing this weekend. I think Fellowship's at 8. I think Roswell's at 7:30. Lee? Roswell's at 8 and Fellowship's at 7:30. So we got a little competition there, but the Christmas tree tree lighting starts at 6. We'll be celebrating with Christmas carols, hot chocolate, fire pits and s'mores, face painters, a very special reading of an incredibly talented reader of Twas the Night Before Christmas, and a lighting of a 40-foot Christmas tree, which you may have already seen in the heart of Roswell Park. And we'll also have a special visit from Santa Claus. There are tons of other great things that are happening in the holidays here in this very first week, and I hope that you will go to our website and check them out and come join us at some of the many fun events. And so at that end, that for this matter, I guess, ends the mayor's, yes, Councilmember Palermo, sorry.
You mentioned there's this very special visit from Santa, which is great. There will be a very special visit from the real Santa. Separately, you will end up probably seeing that night a lot of dads dressed as Santa celebrating for a great Roswell charity and raising money for a great Roswell charity. But there, in addition to the dad Santas, you'll see the real Santa coming up as well. So I want to make sure that that's clear.
Thank you, Mike. Well, and to your point, I'm glad you said that. Everybody, if you know, we've historically had the Christmas tree lighting at the historic town square. And this year, beginning the evening of December 2nd, all the way through January 2nd, there's going to be 37 beautifully decorated trees in the heart of Roswell Park. So cool. I hope you'll, and there'll be Town Square. I'm so sorry. In Town Square. Yeah, 37 trees in Town Square. So that also starts on December 2nd. So please go by and check that out. All right. That being said, let's go to in the mayor's report, let's go to the consent agenda. Does council have any questions or comments regarding any items on the consent agenda? Thank you, council. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the consent agenda? Are there any other further comments or questions on the consent agenda from council? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Councilmember Christine Hill, with a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Peter Vanstrom. All those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda, please raise your hands. Consent agenda is passed unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, next is the Community Development Department. Councilmember Palermo, will you please read the first community development item?
Item number 1, RZ 2022-4151/CU 2022-4179, 25 and 39 Hill Street, 833 and 839 Atlanta Street, rezoning .61 acre portion of 39 Hill Street from Civic to DX downtown mixed use, a conditional use to integrate the previously approved 96 multifamily units into the development, a concurrent variance to reduce the parking requirement by 10%, and a concurrent variance to the mixed-use building type, and this has been withdrawn by the applicant. So, Mr. Davidson, this doesn't require a motion or anything, does it?
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Councilmember Palermo, will you read the next community development item?
Approval of retaining wall for the Oaks in accordance with Unified Development Code, Section 10.5. Developer has requested another deferral to the December 12th, 2022 mayor and council meeting. The developer requested a deferral from the November 14th mayor and council meeting to this November 28th, 2022 mayor and council meeting. And just as I had stated at the November 14th meeting, given that the applicant has requested the deferral, not the same day, but in a previous business day, and therefore gave the opportunity for raising awareness for any residents that were interested in this topic, I certainly will be motioning to defer this until the December 12th, 2022 mayor and council meeting.
Michael, with that being said, I'm going to skip comment. I ask if you'd like to make a motion to defer. Given I don't see any residents protesting that, I will go ahead and motion to defer until the December 12th, 2022 mayor and council meeting. Thank you, Michael. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Vanstrom. All those in favor of approving or deferring this particular motion, please raise your hands. It is deferred. Thank you unanimously. Thank you so much. Next is Environmental Public Works. Councilmember Palermo, will you read the next item?
Item number 3, approval of a text amendment to Articles 24.6, adoption of Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy, Section 24.61, Dredging Assistance Policy of the City of Roswell, Code of Ordinances. This is the first reading. Mr. Davidson?
City Attorney Davidson, would you please read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Utilities and Services, Article 24.6, Adoption of Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 24, Utilities and Services, Article 24.6, Adoption of the Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting said article and replacing it in its entirety by adding a new Article 24.6 entitled Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy, which shall read as shown in Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated herein. And if approved, this is the first reading.
Thank you, David. Councilman Palermo, will you call Sharon forward?
And actually, instead, we're going to have Mr. Watson, who's worked hard on this and definitely
Didn't look
spent a
like
lot of time on
Sharon,
this.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson, Mayor and Council. Good evening. The city has an ordinance that allows property owners and HOAs that are dredging lakes and ponds to receive a reimbursement for a portion of the cost for sediment removal and/or construction costs that are deemed appropriate by the city. Currently, an ordinance that we have only allows one project for an applicant to submit upon, and the proposed text would allow an applicant to phase their project into multiple phases to spread it out over a larger amount of time, and the same maximum reimbursement is unchanged. So this just allows property owners and HOAs to extend their project over multiple years.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Does council have any comments or questions on the text amendment? Being that there are no questions or comments from council, is there anyone from any Roswell residents from our public that'd like to comment on it? Being that there are no comments from any Roswell residents, Councilmember Palermo, would you like to make a motion on the first reading?
I would, and first, again, I'd like to just thank staff for the work that was put into this, so that we've certainly heard from a number of HOAs in different neighborhoods that have trouble paying for what's needed or doing what's needed in one fell swoop, and instead wants to spread it out. And staff with Brian and Sharon and the whole team has been great stewards for Roswell taxpayers and looking for something that's fair for the city, fair for the neighborhoods, et cetera. And basically, this is not changing the amount that can be matched or reimbursed, and instead this is just changing the timing of it, and that's certainly something I'm supporting, in which case I motion to approve the first reading tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Councilmember Christine Hall. All those in favor of the approval of the text amendment, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. Thank you so much, Brian. Next is Finance. Councilmember Hall, will you read the next item, please?
Yes, Mayor. Item number 4, approval of the fiscal year 2023 mid-year budget amendment, and this will be presented by Director Luck, or
Lynn Williams.
Manager Lynn Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lynn Williams, Budget Manager for the city, and I'm here to talk over the mid-year budget amendment. Our agenda is to just look at the background, talk about the summary of the funds affected, and a review of the requests. For the background, the 2023 budget was approved by council on June 13th, 2022. Staff began working on the mid-year budget amendment recommendations in October. Mid-year budget requests are meant to address the needs and opportunities and the other things that arise throughout the year. Funding for the mid-year requests are available from revenues that exceed projections, as well as fund balance. This was presented at the November 15th committee. So this is at the high level. I'm going to talk through the funds themselves, and then I'll go through just a quick summary of the items. So the items in general fund policy has a reserve of 25%, and during the budget process, we did have a excess of revenues over expenditures of $570,000. That was from the first reading where we did some cuts. The current estimated general fund balance is set at $3.4 million. So at the top of the page, you see 3.9. So it's those two numbers added up. The revenue adjustments that I'll show you just in a second add up to $675,000, which gives us total funding in general fund, which is our main generalized pot for most services, $4.6 million. The general fund operating expenditure adjustments total $217,130, and a transfer to capital based on all requests is $2.1 million. The total remaining in general fund will be 2.2 if it's passed. In capital projects, we did not have a fund balance left over after the budget, so it is just revenues and expenditures in this fund. So a transfer from general fund based on all the requests is on the top line, a transfer from special events fund on the second line, and that is $125,000, and I'll tell you which item that relates to. And the reallocation from completed projects. So this is completed projects that we had some savings on. So we want to use those savings on additional. Special events fund, we did have a balance of estimated at 190,000, and the total that we would like to use 125,000, leaving a fund balance of 65,000. The T-SPLOST 2 fund, we have roughly a balance of 20 million, and we would like to allocate that 20 million into projects. So this is just a quick review of these requests. The sales tax revenue has come in well and is above projection. So we would like to recognize 1.1 million more in revenue for FY23. The property tax, due to the rollback in the millage rate, this is the actual item to reduce that revenue number to the amount that we actually approved the millage at. And so that net is 675,000. On the operating adjustments, for the first line, I have increased funding for legal fees of 250,000. The next one is software for CAD to CAD integration for fire for 34,000. The street pole banner installation and removal on Canton Street for Recreation Parks Historic Cultural Affairs for 16,000. And the last one on that funded group is reclassification to capital. This is a reduction in general fund, an increase in capital. It's just classifying that as capital, not in operating. The lower item on here was unfunded so far, and that is the cemetery operating increase of 8,000. For the capital adjustments, we have Cultural Arts Center. There were 2 items for that. 73,000 for door hardware replacements and 20,500 for orchestra pit cover renovations. The next item is being funded by special events fund balance. This is the Christmas in Roswell. This is the tree, the lighting, and the decorations for a total of 125. Heart of Roswell Park furniture installation for 44,000. Town Square improvements for 425,910. The next item is the citywide resurfacing and reconstruction at 1.5 million. And then bridge replacement and maintenance concept and survey for 150,000 for transportation. And the last item is that net of 82,930 to classify that camera purchase as capital. The T-SPLOST 2 adjustments include Riverside Corridor. Actually, I won't read through all of these unless y'all need me to. There's 20 million on this page. Most of those are multi-use trails, some additional funding for Big Creek and Pine Grove. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you so much. Council, any comments or questions for Lynn? Thank you, Council. Any Roswell residents with questions or comments for Lynn? All right, I bring it back to Council. Would you like, I know you spoke eloquently and long previously. Would you like to speak further on the matter? All right, very good. Councilmember Hall, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve item number 4, approval of the fiscal year 2023 mid-year budget amendment.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All those in favor of the approval of the FY 2023 mid-year budget amendment, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, next item on the agenda is public safety. Councilmember Hills, will you read the next public safety item, please?
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Approval to accept a donation of fitness equipment from Orange Theory Fitness in Roswell. And we were going to have our PD come up and speak about this. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We presented this item first at committee for November 15th. This is to receive the donation of 10 treadmills from Orange Theory Fitness Roswell. And the owner and operators are here, Julie and Manny Santana. I actually didn't know this until today, but I found out that these treadmills new cost about $6,000. So they are used treadmills, but even in that state, this donation is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000. So it's a huge donation to the health and well-being of our first responders. These 10 treadmills will be split up between both police and fire. 7 of them going to the fire department, the other 3 to the police department, should you guys approve this evening. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. Council, any comments or questions? Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Just definitely appreciate our public safety group, both police department and fire department, working well together on what was discussed in committee, which I think worked great for both departments. And really, really thankful of Orange Theory and the very generous offer. So thank you.
Absolutely. Council, any further comments or questions? Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo what Councilmember Palermo said, but I also want to say this is exactly what a small town does. Even though we're a great big city, this is a small town feel, relationships and kindness, supporting each other. So Orange Theory, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any comments from Roswell residents? Thank you so much. Bring it back to council. Any additional comments? Thanks. All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate it, guys, very much. Councilmember Hills, would you say a motion? Give us a motion, please.
Yes, sir. Motion to approve to accept a donation of fitness equipment from Orange Theory Fitness of Roswell.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Hills. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Mortland. All in favor of the approval to accept a donation of fitness equipment from Orange Theory Fitness here in Roswell, please raise your hands. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Very good.
Mayor and Council, if you guys would be so willing, is it possible to get a photograph with Manny and Julie?
Yes. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, you ready? And we're good. Thank you.
Okay. So we're now going to go to the city attorney's report. David Davidson. David, would you please read your first item on your report?
Thank you, Mayor. The first item I have is approval of resolution instituting a 90-day temporary moratorium on the acceptance of zoning applications and/or business license applications for a state-authorized licensee to dispense low THC oil or products within the city of Roswell in order to make amendments to the Roswell Unified Development Code. Basically, what this will do is currently there are 2 entities that can approve a dispensing license in the state. One is the State Board of Pharmacies, which oversees regular pharmacies. The other is the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. Currently, they have not accepted any applications, nor have they issued any licenses. But the state law gives the city the ability to provide zoning regulations on the retail dispensary only. The pharmacy will be treated as any other pharmacy. So what this will do is just a 90-day moratorium, allow us to come up with some zoning regulations on the retail dispensary only.
So, David, just to be clear, because I know this could be very confusing to everybody, is that the law in the state of Georgia does allow both pharmacies and dispensaries, right,
Correct.
to dispense this product.
Correct.
All right.
If they have a dispensing license.
If they have a dispensing license.
Right.
And what this is a moratorium on the dispensing side, correct?
On the dispensary only.
Dispensary only, not on the
Correct.
pharmacy side.
Correct.
But on the dispensary only.
Correct.
Okay.
We already regulate where pharmacies can go in the city, so this would be just the dispensaries only.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. And so, Mr. Davidson, of course, with a moratorium, ultimately during those public committee meetings, council meetings, et cetera, ultimately this council could decide to make no changes at all, could decide to completely ban something, or could decide to update the code just to give specific regulations, rules, locations, things like that. Is that a fair assessment of what could happen during the moratorium, or how would you describe
So
that?
the state law does not actually allow us to ban dispensaries completely, so we wouldn't be able to do that, but you can regulate where they go in order to ensure that people will have access to the medical cannabis.
Okay, so now that you've clarified thank you for clarifying the state law. So ultimately, through this process, the city could end up making no regulations at all, or could add regulations through this process?
That's correct.
Excellent, thank you.
Michael, would you just give a little further clarification on that last statement? It was an excellent point you just made.
Well, I think it's important to understand that a moratorium, the real purpose of the question is just for clarification, because the city of Roswell has certainly had a number of moratoriums in the past. Our neighboring cities and many other cities in Metro Atlanta have all had moratoriums in the past. And just want to be very clear, a moratorium is not making any decision, it's not making any specific change. All it's saying is temporarily that there's a moratorium to allow the opportunity for the elected body to potentially add regulations.
And exactly, and would you like to comment on what the adding, because you're talking about state law, so the regulations would be around location, correct?
I think that's something that would make a lot of sense to certainly make sure that I believe the city of Roswell should regulate on the locations where it is or is not available.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you kind of edifying that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any further comments or questions from council on the matter? Being that there are no other further comments or questions from council, I raise it to Roswell residents. Any Roswell residents would like to comment on this matter? Being that no Roswell residents would like to comment on the matter, I'm going to bring it back to council for any potential opportunities for any additional questions on the issue. Okay. So, is there a motion on this item from any council member? Councilmember Peter Vanstrom?
Motion to approve the resolution instituting a 90-day temporary moratorium on the accepting of zoning application and/or business license applications for the state authorized license to dispense low THC oil products within the city of Roswell in order to make amendments to the Roswell Unified Development Code.
Thank you, Peter. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Hills. All those in favor of the approval of the resolution for instituting a 90-day temporary moratorium, please raise your hands. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. David, please read the last item on your report.
Thank you, Mayor. The last item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate.
Do I have a motion for closure?
Motion for closure?
For closure by Councilmember Palermo. Do I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Morthland. All those in favor of going to closure, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. At this time, meaning that there are no other items, this mayor and council meeting of November 28, 2022 is adjourned. Thank you so much.